Hello, friends and listeners. Welcome to Truth, Lies, and Alibis, the true crime podcast from three friends sharing their perspectives from having years of 911 dispatching experience.
Episode 6, The Sleepwalking Defense. On today's episode, Kylee, Jess, and I discuss the case of Scott Falater and the sleepwalking defense that has been used too many times. My question today is, have you guys ever known someone who was a sleepwalker?
Yes, actually, somebody I know sleepwalks. When he gets like super stressed out, he will, or not even super stressed out, he talks a lot in his sleep and he'll get up and sleepwalk, like pick things up and do things, and then he'll go lay back down. So it's different.
Is he like ever aggressive? You know that scene? Is it Step Brothers? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do.
Where they're like,
when he's like,
don't ever wake up a sleepwalker.
I think he's been not aggressive, but like if you try to guide him or like wake him up, he get freaked out. Like I think he's been freaked out. Mm-hmm. Like just like what's happening.
What about you, Jess?
I had an ex that would sleepwalk because of a medication that he was on.
Was it Ambien?
No.
Because that stuff's scary.
No, I don't remember what it was, but I remember there was a couple of times, and he would have like full on conversations.
That's creepy.
I can't remember the one. There's a very specific conversation we had that like sticks out in my memory, but I can't remember the details of it. He didn't do it all the time. It was only when he was on that certain medication, and I remember they were trying to find like the best medication for him.
Yeah.
And that's the only person when I was little, I sleptwalk once in my entire life. And it's that like, I was little and my mom used to work nights. So I would stay with my grandparents at their house, and where I would sleep and where they would sleep was completely across the house. And I was 5 maybe, so like that perfect creepy kid age, and I went into my Nana and Papa's room and I woke my Nana up and I kept asking her about a red book. I don't know. And then she got out of bed and made me go back to bed, got me back and tucked me in. I fell back asleep. To her knowledge, she didn't realize I was sleepwalking until the morning. I had no recollection of
when you were like, what are you talking about?
A red book. In the morning, she came to me and she was like, "What is this? What was this red book you were talking about?" And I was like, "What do you mean? Like, what are you talking about?" And she was like, "You woke me up and you were asking about a red book." And I was like, I don't remember that. I don't know what you're talking about. It was this weird dream that I was looking for a red book. Those are the only two.
My sister used to sleepwalk when we were younger. She walked into the wall a couple of times, I think.
Ouch.
She went on a trip with her friend and got up at the hotel and walked into the wall.
Oh, no.
And her mom tells that story all the time. But Novalee also sleepwalks sometimes.
Oh, really?
And stands over me like a creepy person. And yeah, kids are just creepy at any age, Jess, okay? If they're sleepwalking and they're standing over their parents or anyone, it's creepy.
That's true. Any looming figure that you're waking up to is pretty creepy.
Especially if it's a child, I feel like. I don't know why.
To be fair, I would be equally as creeped out if I woke up and there was an adult looming over my bed, specifically because I live alone.
Fair. That's fair. I shouldn't say that I wouldn't be creeped out if some weirdo standing in my room staring at me.
Oh, God.
It just so happened to be my daughter that time, so. According to the Mayo Clinic, sleepwalking involves getting up and walking around while in a state of sleep. More common in children than adults, sleepwalking is usually outgrown by the teen years. Sleepwalking usually occurs early in the night, often 1 to 2 hours after falling asleep. It is unlikely to occur during naps, and a sleepwalking episode can occur rarely or often, and an episode generally lasts several minutes but can last longer. So today's episode includes multiple stories of supposed sleepwalking that ended in murder. The sleepwalking defense was used as early as 1846 by Albert Terrell, who murdered his lover, who was also a sex worker. She had her throat slit and was found almost decapitated in a burning bed. His family hired an excellent lawyer, and he was acquitted. On the night of January 17th, 1997, Stephanie Reedhead and Greg Coons were getting ready for bed at their Phoenix, Arizona home when Stephanie heard moaning or crying outside the window. They looked out the window and saw a woman who would later be identified as Yarmila Falater laying on the ground, moving slightly. Coons thought that the woman may be drunk and passed out, but then saw the woman's husband, Scott Falater, drag Yarmila into the pool and hold her head underwater, so he ran inside and dialed 911. I saw this, I think it was 2020. They did a 2020 episode about it, and they were talking about it, and they were like, at first we thought they were just outside doing things, you know, and then he pulled her into the water and held her head under the water, and I was like, yeah, that's a little suspicious. It's a little bit terrifying. So responding officers found Yarmila floating in the pool surrounded by bloody water. They described the scene as how they assumed a shark attack would look because of how much blood was in the water. And after pulling her out of the water, they could tell that she was probably deceased. They then could see Scott moving her around in the house upstairs, and one of the responding officers attempted life-saving measures on Yarmila, while the other apprehended Scott on the stairs and got him to the ground. He then asked Scott who else was in the home. He said there were 3 other people, his 2 children, and his wife. However, the responding officer was confused because he knew his wife was in the pool when he arrived. Officers searched the house and found the 2 children asleep in bed, and in an interview with 2020, their son Michael said, I went to bed as a 12-year-old kid with a happy life, and I woke up to a police officer telling me that my mother had died.
Poor kid.
Yeah, how sad is that?
Yeah.
The police then took Scott to the station for questioning. He still didn't seem to understand what was happening at the time, or depending on who you ask, he was pretending he didn't know what was happening. A Phoenix homicide detective, John Norman, interrogated Scott when he came in, but Scott said he couldn't remember harming his wife. Norman asked Scott why he had blood on his neck, and Scott said he didn't even know it was there. That's when Norman told Scott that his neighbor had witnessed the crime, and that he didn't believe for a second that he had no recollection of the crime. In an interview with 2020, he referred to his story as hogwash. In June of 1999, the case went to trial, and the deputy Maricopa County attorney at the time was Juan Martinez, who was the same prosecutor for the Jodi Arias case. In the Falater case, he asked for the death penalty. According to the 2020 episode, there was no real motive that stood out. A coworker was called to testify that he had called his wife dumpy, and they implied because of his religious beliefs, he didn't want to divorce her, but he didn't want to be with her either. There's no financial motive, no affairs that could be found, and one jury member said the prosecution never established anything that even faintly resembled a motive. Also, I'd like to just tell you, on that 2020 episode, it talked about how he had woken up early that morning to get ready for church, and he taught church classes, and then he had gone to work and came home, and then his wife had asked him to work on the pool, and he'd worked on the pool and he wasn't able to get the problem fixed, and then he had gone to bed. So they were saying that he was just like really tired and really stressed out and had done too much, which I was like, maybe reevaluate your schedule, because I think it said he woke up at like 4 o'clock in the morning to work on church stuff. That's pretty intense. Like they said, they never presented anything that could be a motive. And during the trial, there were a few key testimonies, including the chief medical examiner, Dr. Philip Keene, who testified that she had a total of 44 stab wounds and that most of them were defensive, but some were fatal. Another key witness was the neighbor, Coons. Although he didn't see the attack, he could see Scott walking around the house and turning lights on and off while Yarmila lay on the ground. He then saw Scott put gloves on before walking over to drown his wife in the pool.
Okay.
Initially, the defense's plan was to plead guilty by reason of insanity. However, when the mother and sister of the defendant offered up stories of sleepwalking, they changed their defense. His mother and sister testified that there were multiple times during his childhood when Scott had had an episode of sleepwalking and times when he had been violent while sleepwalking. They said that the sleepwalking always occurred when he was under extreme amounts of stress, and he still insisted that he didn't remember any of these sleepwalking episodes or the murder of his wife. Scott admitted that the defense was far-fetched, and in a 2020 interview, he said, I didn't question my attorney or push him hard at the time, but inside I just felt it was a bunch of BS. It was very simple and pure BS, and it had no basis on reality.
He said that about his own defense?
Yeah, he said
Okay.
that about it, about his sleepwalking defense
Okay.
in this 2020 episode. Years later, I think it was either this year or last year, they re-interviewed him and his kids and stuff. And in the episode, they pointed out how not only did this guy, like his neighbor saw him go put gloves on before dragging her to the pool. When the officers got there, he had changed his clothes. He had like showered off and changed his clothes, and he had like a little bit of blood on him. And he was like, I don't know where that blood's from. He had stored the knife and other things in Tupperware in his car.
Yep.
How could he do all of this while sleepwalking is my question.
Yeah, that kind of seems to have thought behind it.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just seems like so much to do while you're sleepwalking, like going up and down the stair. Like,
Yeah.
it just seems like a lot to me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. If you're not happy in your marriage, really, the bottom line is resorting to murder is not. If you think murder is better than divorce, you should seek some therapy. Like, you need to go talk to somebody, because I 100% believe that person would want to be alive.
As a divorced human, I can tell you that it does get better. So please, like Kylee says, seek some help. Maybe think about things a little bit.
Can we like wrap that around to, if your religion pushes that divorce is so bad that it drives you to murder?
Can I get an amen?
Yeah, maybe that's
Amen.
another reevaluation.
Pretty sure your religion also says that murder is bad. So,
I mean,
You know what?
but is
Fair.
murder worse than divorce? I mean, come on now.
yes.
That was
Yes,
a joke.
I know.
Everybody, that was a joke. Also, I just like to point out that I have told Ryan multiple times that if he ever gets tired of me or like doesn't want to be with me anymore, to please not push me off a cliff or drown me or anything else. Just be like, hey, yo, I don't want to spend life with you. And I'll be like, okay, bye.
Yeah, to be
Like-
fair, like my whole thing was always like, hey, don't lie to me. Like, if you're unhappy, tell me you're unhappy.
Yeah.
I didn't know I needed to add the caveat of like, if you don't love me anymore, you don't need to murder me. It's okay. Just tell me.
Hashtag murder's a sin. I've told Mike the same thing, Brittany, where I've been like, if you don't love me anymore, just don't murder me. Just don't poison me. Don't kill me. Just say, Kylee, you suck, and I don't want to be with you anymore. And I'll say, okay, you suck too. Okay, bye. And then that's it. That's all
Yeah,
it needs
if you
to be.
never want to see me again, just tell me that. And I'll go. You don't have to see me again, but don't put me in the ground.
Yeah, and in return, I will do the same for you.
Don't kill me, and I won't kill you.
We won't become episodes of Buried in the Backyard. So guys, my husband is missing. Just thought I'd throw that out there.
It's so weird.
And you know what? I think I was sleepwalking that day. So weird.
But Jess, that has no basis in reality, okay? I gotta come up with something better.
I mean, I'm not going to argue that.
Okay, so Falater told 2020, this sounds to me like a Twinkie defense, whatever that means. However, after agreeing to undergo a sleep study at an Arizona hospital and consulting 2 expert witnesses, Scott agreed to use the sleepwalking defense. And the defense called 2 of the world's leading sleep experts at the time, a Dr. Roger Broughton and a Dr. Rosalind Cartwright, who both testified that they believe Scott had killed his wife while sleepwalking. And they believe that she may have tried to interfere with Scott's sleepwalking, and he saw her as a threat, which prompted the attack. The defense also called 2 of Scott's cellmates who testified they had seen Scott sleepwalking while they were in the cell, as Jess shakes her head.
I shake my head because how many stab wounds? Over 40?
44 stab
44.
wounds. And then he drug her
That's
to the
not-
pool.
Yeah. Oh, no. Sorry.
I agree with you. This is why I picked this story today, because I was like, I don't think any of this is real.
She startled him while he was sleepwalking. So she ran into my knife. She ran into my knife 44 times.
After that, he pulls her into the pool. He goes upstairs and takes a shower. He hides all the evidence.
So they convince him to use the
Oh, yeah.
sleepwalking defense.
I don't know how exactly it came up, but his sister and his mom said he was violent while sleepwalking. Like, his sister even said she had times when he had been violent with her while he was sleepwalking. And then his defense attorney was like, oh, you know what? That sounds like a good defense. Yeah. And for everyone who can't see Jess and Kylie's faces right now, they just look like they don't understand what's going on. I don't understand the thought process either.
I think it takes a very specific person to be a defense attorney.
I could never be a defense attorney.
Because you're hired to defend them, whatever the situation. So
yep,
you're looking for all those. That's the point of it, right? So when I was in high school, I did teen court, and what that was is a way for when juveniles got in trouble, they could essentially be brought before a jury of their peers to determine the community service or reparations or whatever. So we would have quote unquote legitimate court cases for them. But what we would do is there would be competitions throughout the state for teen court, and so we were given actual cases that had gone to state court with names changed and things like that. Your own team was the witnesses.
That's really cool.
Attorneys. And as the defense, you're given these people that have committed some sort of crime, and your job is to plant that, and this is the point behind my entire story, that seed of doubt. That's all you need. That's all you need.
That's all you need in any court case.
Because that prosecutor has to prove beyond reasonable doubt. That was drilled into us from the very beginning. You're doing this as prosecution. You have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt so that the jury can go in there and say, we know 100% that this person did this for this, blah, 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 blah. All the defense has to do is plant that doubt.
Yeah.
Well, no, he wasn't in his right mind. He has history of sleepwalking.
But does he?
That seed's been planted.
I guess that's true.
Yeah.
But I just don't think I could ever be a defense attorney.
No, I won't.
But everybody's innocent until proven guilty, right?
Yeah.
So I could not be a defense attorney either. But it's hard. I mean, there's people out there, like you've got the Innocent Project, you've got the other one.
Yeah, they do amazing things.
They do truly defend people who have been wrongfully convicted or have gotten like the short end of a stick. They had bad cards. For all of us, I think we can agree that it just seems like a very weak defense and a very unbelievable defense. But like Jessica said, if that defense attorney can sow a seed of doubt in any of those jurors or any person that's in there, then they have a chance to either like offer a plea deal or offer lesser charges or ultimately for the case to get dismissed. And it's again, there's a little opening to how our system operates, and is it really just? And I don't know if any system out there is ever going to be truly just. But it's that eye-opener of things aren't always fair, things aren't always what they seem. But this case, this is that weird one where it's like, okay, well, let's try it, let's see. And will it open a door for other people to use it? Or will this continue to just be a case where they tried this and it was super weak and this is weird, and it'll be that case that we just talk about how weird it is. It could be believable had he not showered and hidden the evidence and stated he knew his wife was in the pool, but then said his wife was in the house. There's too much still that's a part of it that point to this not being a sleepwalking accident. Or him being distraught in any way. Like you could say, well, I was sleepwalking, but I woke up and I knew what I did and I was freaking out. Like you could admit to that, and then maybe this would be a little bit more believable. But the way it's been brought about, it's very weird.
Fair point.
It is weird. And it's weird to me that he was so calm when they came and found him.
And it's the pieces of the pieces that link together, right? So the saying that, the response was that she might have messed with him, like tried to wake him up, and he responded aggressively. There's that. And then it's the middle of the night. Did you drag her to the kitchen to stab her? Like, why do you have a knife on you when you're...
Yeah, and they were at the pool, so...
So she was stabbed next to the pool?
Yes, I believe she was stabbed next to the pool, and she wanted him to fix the pool that night.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep.
So maybe he lost his shit because she was upset because he couldn't get it done.
That's kind of where I was headed as well, is the fact that not only does she get stabbed, but then he drags her and drowns her in the pool, which there was a point of tension about that earlier in the day.
And his neighbor
Like,
saw
screw
it.
You and your pool.
It's excessive.
So wait, how did his sleepwalking brain tell him to put gloves on before dragging her to the pool too?
See, that there's just this weird stuff, but it's also excessive. It shows that it's personal. You stabbed her 44 times. You've probably watched enough true crime and worked in this field enough as a dispatcher to understand that anything more than, like, I'm not an expert, so please I don't know the actual numbers, but anything more than like twice of a stabbing is probably a little personal. And then it's excessive in the fact that he drags her in the pool to drown her. This is not like this happened or this is an accident. This is like, it's almost like it's premeditated.
There's like gotta be so much hate. Yeah. Like there's too much, it's overkill, right?
Right, that's the word I'm looking for.
Like he stabbed her 44 times. It's insane. It's just insane.
I think that's a very fair point and a very good term. The emotionally charged response of that, right? Like, that's not fighting somebody off that you think is attacking you while you're sleepwalking. That's repeatedly stabbing the person over and over again and then dragging their body and making sure that they drown.
Yeah.
That's very emotionally charged.
Also, I'm sure she was screaming and fighting back.
And wasn't the dog barking too?
I don't know about the dog.
Don't I remember? I feel like I remember reading something or watching something about, there's the aspect of her fighting back and him not waking up, and then the dog was barking the entire time. And I almost want to say that part of the reason why the neighbors looked was because the dog was barking so bad. And I feel like I read that somewhere, but I don't know if that's true. Maybe I'm thinking of a different case.
I don't remember reading about a dog, but there is something in one of these stories online that says something about him telling his dog to lay down. But yeah, you would think a dog would wake someone up if they were sleepwalking.
Yeah, there was a lot to this case.
And if the dog was waking him up, how is that not a threat?
Right. It's a weak defense, and there's too much to this case that shows that you could make an educated guess that this was a premeditated thing, or that he knew what he did and he was trying to hide it. There's no doubt in my mind that whether he did it by accident or not, it's so much overkill. It's so emotionally charged. He didn't just run into your knife 10 times. You stabbed her 44 times. That's rage.
Yeah.
That's pure rage.
Yes.
But what my question is, if he hadn't gotten caught, like,
What was his plan?
Where was he going with this? The Falater children also testified that they had a happy, loving childhood and had never seen their father become violent. Detective testified that they found Falater's bloody clothing in a food container, like I was saying, with a bloody hunting knife in the spare tire storage of Scott's car. They presented it as evidence that Scott had tried to shower and clean up after the crime to hide his involvement. And Dr. Broughton, one of the defense experts, admitted that it wasn't common for sleepwalkers to carry out so many actions during a single episode of sleepwalking, and the prosecutor's experts testified that Scott had to have been awake during the attack in order to carry out so many different actions. Scott took the stand in his own defense because, they always do, and he testified that he had no recollection of the night of the attack and that he loves his wife. He was eventually found guilty of first-degree murder and was sentenced to life in prison. Some of the jurors said they could believe that he may have stabbed his wife while sleepwalking, but not that he had also drowned her and then hid the clothing and the knives and cleaned up.
So the defense didn't stick.
No.
Thank goodness. I didn't know where this was going.
I'm all, oh, and by the way, he got off. Jess is like, I quit. I'm never going to listen to another story again. He still remains in prison to this day. He expects to live out the remainder of his life in prison, and their son still visits him in prison and hopes to have a relationship with him for the rest of his life. However, the daughter told the father it was too hard to visit him and doesn't want to have contact with him. In the interview they did with him, the 2020 episode, I think they were quarantined for COVID, and in the 2020 episode, Scott said that he hopes to be reunited with his wife in heaven and thinks she would be more forgiving of him than he has been of himself. He also stated, she knows more than I do about what happened that night, and she will actually know how I've conducted myself since then, and I want to be sure that I'm still worthy of her by how I carry myself now.
You're not getting any sympathy from anybody.
No.
Like, I get that you're trying. What a show. What a show.
Yeah.
I just, reading those words made me sick to my stomach a little bit. I think he's convinced himself that he didn't do it.
Yeah.
Because, and that's the only way he can, live with himself,
To me, those words sound so arrogant.
Yeah. Exactly.
I don't get the sense that it's that delusion. I think he knows exactly what he did, and he's just telling people what he thinks they want to hear. Oh, I love my wife. She'll forgive me. I'm gonna see her in heaven. No, bitch, you kill me? I ain't never forgiven you. It doesn't matter if you spend life in jail.
Also, as Kylee has stated, murder is also a sin. So I think that I don't think he
Murder
would
is
be
also a
going to heaven. I mean, I can't judge, but I don't think he would be.
Religion or not, though, setting all of that aside, like, it just, like Jessica said, it's arrogant. You're saying what you think people want to hear. It's a show, right? Like,
Yep.
it's, if she was still here and she had survived that, I don't think that that's what she would say to you. Also,
Yeah.
like, you're very lucky that your son is still striving to have some kind of connection with you.
Yeah.
Yes.
But your daughter, like, no matter how hard your relationship with your mother can be, and I know it's different for everybody out there, like, there's some crap parents out there, right? But, like, it's still your mom, and it's got to be growing up knowing that you could have had this life with your mom there. You had this good life before this happened, and you could still have that in your mom missed your first prom. Your mom misses you growing up and you going to have a relationship with her, and her taking you to go, like, talking to her about boys and dates and all this stuff. You miss this because somebody took it from you.
And that somebody is your dad.
And it was your dad. Like, your dad changed your whole life that you could have had. And I know that I would have struggled with that. You know what I mean? Like, I really want my mom here, or I'm at the grocery store and I can't call my mom to ask her, where's the spaghetti sauce aisle?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or first apartment.
Well, if they not
Like,
only lost their mom too, but then they lost their dad, which, I mean, probably in this case is a good thing. But it's sad because they lose both parents at once, and they do go to sleep thinking they have this happy family, and they find out it's shit.
Can I just say, if somebody killed my mom, I would never forgive them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't even like my mom, and I would forgive them.
I would die for my mom. And that's so unforgivable. What it does is it forces me to really kind of try and get insight into their son's mind. Is that where he's coming from? The fact that he lost his mom, so he doesn't want to lose his dad too? How do you form a relationship like that when you know that something...
With your mom's murderer.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a lot to think about.
I would be so distraught if something bad happened to my mom.
Yeah.
I would not be able to I would have to go to prison to visit that person.
No.
Right.
I wouldn't want anything to do with them.
Nope. I would hope that you got the worst that you could get.
It would be so hard to... Well, for me, if anything ever did happen to my mom, it will take a long time for me to become a functional human again.
Mm-hmm.
I would never, if I formed a relationship, I think, you see those things where the family feels the need to get to know the suspect or whatever as some sort of closure.
Yeah.
I feel the opposite of that because I think it would be easier for me. I compartmentalize more than anything else, and I think it would be easiest for me to just completely cut them out because of what they'd done. I wouldn't want to meet them.
Nope.
I wouldn't want anything to do with them. I wouldn't want to listen to what they had to say. Nothing.
No.
Just, I have no need for closure from you.
It just seems like, all these things, and then you're going to sit there and you're going to say,
Yeah.
she knows more about that night than I do. Yeah, she died. Like, you.
Even if she survived, she would not know more about that night than he did. Because she didn't know it was coming.
No.
And I think he did. He could have stopped after the first stab. I'm just throwing that out there.
And I feel like that would wake you up. And she's trying to fight you off. And then getting in water.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right?
He's full of
like,
crap.
that's like one of those things where like somebody throws water on you in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
You're like,
You wake up.
you wake up.
Yeah.
So, like, you can't, I'm
Right.
sure sleepwalking is a whole different world, but there's too much to this for it to be like, well, I was sleepwalking. I didn't know I did it.
Yep.
Okay, nice try, buddy.
So if that case makes you mad, I'm going to tell you about another case that was used before this. They used the sleepwalking defense. So there was the case, right? the first case that they know of the sleepwalking where he got off. And according to a list on Ranker, there are at least 12 sleepwalkers who have murdered while sleepwalking that we know of. One of these sleepwalkers was the example that Scott Flater may have used for his trial. In 1987, Ken Parks of Canada murdered his in-laws and claimed he had no recollection of the event because he was sleepwalking. Not only did he murder them, he claimed to have driven around 12.5 miles to get there before murdering him. After entering his in-law's house, he bludgeoned his mother-in-law to death with a tire iron and then attempted to strangle his father-in-law to death, but the father-in-law survived. After this occurred, he drove himself to the police station covered in blood and told officers there, "I think I have just killed 2 people." After police looked into Ken's background, they discovered he was a compulsive gambler and had recently embezzled money from his own family. The police believed that this was the motive for the murders, and Ken insisted that he had committed the murders while sleepwalking after he had nodded off while watching TV. He said he was fast asleep even when he had turned himself in, and after experts testified and everything, his story made headlines when he was found not guilty and walked out of the courtroom a free man. And he had a history of sleepwalking, so the jury didn't believe he was responsible for his actions. There was also been more recently a case on Hulu, I don't know if you guys saw it, maybe Kylee did, titled Dead Asleep, about Randy Herman Jr., who stabbed his childhood friend and roommate Brooke Preston to death. He had a history of sleepwalking but was found guilty and was sentenced to life in prison. And there was this whole documentary about it. It's really interesting. I watched it. I don't believe him. I think there's a lot of stuff on there. You'll have to watch it to get all the details. But basically, he was in love with this roommate, I think, and she was leaving and moving in with her boyfriend elsewhere. And he murdered her and then turned himself in and tried to say that he was sleepwalking. I just think it's fascinating that people still are using this defense.
I know sleep studies are constantly happening. So I'm sure that there are constant ongoing studies on sleepwalking and the effects of and the cognitive
and what actually
levels
happens.
Yeah, cognitive levels of what somebody can do and what will bring them out of it. So I'd be interested to see in the future what comes from those studies.
Yeah.
Because you can't, without something that's actual scientific proof, you can always use that defense. You may not get off, but that defense is always a possibility.
That little tiny seed of doubt, and it's just in one juror too.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it didn't work for Scott Flater. It didn't work for Randy Herman Jr. Unfortunately, it worked for that Ken guy from Canada who drove his car to his in-laws' house and then bludgeoned his mother-in-law to death.
That's nuts. That's again, there's the details of the case. I've heard of people walking out of their house. I've never heard of anybody driving.
To be fair, I've heard of people driving while sleeping if they're taking Ambien. That's why I said Ambien's scary. But that's taking a drug that literally causes those effects. It's not just going to sleep and having that happen and drive
12 miles.
Please tell me how he didn't get hit a car or
go off the road,
drive off the road. It's insane.
It just seems too much for me. You drive 12 miles, you bludgeon somebody to death, and then you try to do it to another person. You can't tell me that second person didn't wake up, was trying to stop you, that she didn't try to fight, wake up and in the moments that she had left try to do anything. And then you drive yourself to the police. That shows a guilty conscience. And you say, I think I just killed 2. No, you just killed 2 people.
You know exactly who they are too, because it was all premeditated in my mind.
That just looks, from my standpoint, that's shady. You did it, and you did it, and you're panicking, and you came up with a crap defense, and unluckily for everybody else, but luckily for you it worked. That sucked, because you got away with it.
And that's why I think that experts can make or break a case.
Yep.
Especially when it comes to defense.
But you can pay experts, some experts I put in quotes, you can pay them to say whatever you want. Yeah. That's another thing, is defense people can pay the right amount of money, and then their expert will say what they want them to say.
Well, when I say experts make or break the case, I'm not putting any sort of morality on that. Well, and they're there to speak as an authority on something. Mm-hmm. So if you bring in a sleepwalking expert, and your expert is spouting off quote unquote truths about sleepwalking to your jury.
What makes an expert?
An expert is a person who has a comprehensive and authoritative knowledge or skill in a particular area. That's per the dictionary, the Oxford Dictionary on Google. I don't know what makes an expert.
I could be considered an expert in some things.
Yeah, like we've all got almost 10 years of it. Collectively, we've got like almost 20 or something like that.
26.
So in dispatching, what truly defines an expert in court?
And science is ever changing, so on your experts. I'm just kidding. I know there are actual experts that are out there doing good work.
Thank you for listening. Additional information for each case can be found on our website, truthliesandalibis.buzzsprout.com. New episodes will be uploaded every Monday. Find us on Instagram and Facebook at Truth, Lies, and Alibis.